precursor for the female hormone, so we'll call this the daughter, which is estrogen, and there are a few estrogens. And progesterone, being the mother, is mother of the male hormone, the son, which is testosterone. And when these hormones get out of balance, that can contribute to these cancers. You see, estrogen's role is that of a cell proliferator. That means causes massive cell growth. And the Cancer Foundation in Australia have stated that estrogen is a known human carcinogen. So that's been defined by the Cancer Foundation. So why would estrogen be out of balance? Mostly because of the contraceptive pill. It was introduced to women in 1957. 1960s was called the sexual revolution. Women want to be able to have sex without having a baby. But what they don't realise, and what many women still don't realise, is the devastating effect that it has on women to cause this imbalance. You see, the synthetic hormones cause an imbalance, and that imbalance is the rise of estrogen and the dropping of mother hormone. And progesterone, as the mother hormone, plays a protective role on testosterone, meaning it's keeping testosterone in the place it should be, because when testosterone goes too high, it converts to another type of testosterone that causes inflammation of the prostate gland. So when you've got this rise in estrogen with its cell proliferator action, then you've got growths in the breast contributing to breast cancer. You've got growths in the ovaries, you've got growths in the cervix, and all of those areas. And so with hormonal cancers, it's of the utmost importance to balance back the hormones. And there's a herb, it's called the wild yam. And the wild yam is grown extensively by the pharmaceutical company, because the pharmaceutical company extract a plant chemical called diosgenin, and diosgenin in a laboratory can be converted to progesterone. But the pharmaceutical company cannot patent progesterone because it can't patent anything natural. So it adds a few more atoms in other areas and comes up with a synthetic estrogen. Adds a few more atoms in another area and comes up with a synthetic progesterone. It's called progestin or progestone. And it's these synthetic hormones that are in the pill. And when they're fed into the biochemical pathway that our body uses to make hormones, causes a disruption. And that's what prevents a woman falling pregnant, this disruption. But the problem is, these synthetic hormones are causing a rise in estrogen. And the progesterone does not help. There's progestin. It competes with our progesterone. Our body runs according to precision imbalance, and so what this has done is thrown it out. And we've got another problem today. What's causing a chicken to grow in 5 weeks for market? It's the growth hormones. Well, against the law to give growth hormones now, so they've just genetically modified the chicken to produce more estrogen so it grows quicker. And if the human eats that chicken, what happens to them? And if it's in the chicken, it's in the egg. There's more. And that is fabrics, chemicals. In the Industrial Revolution, basically, is where a lot of chemicals were produced, and glyphosate, which is the active component in Roundup, it kills the weeds by actually affecting their hormones. So when the human eats the plant that's actually been contaminated with Roundup, that's having an effect. But also in the Industrial Revolution, there were 3 fabrics that were created in a chemical laboratory: nylon, acrylic, polyester. Nylon, acrylic, and polyester are chemical fabrics. And when they touch the skin and the pores in the skin take them in, little by little, that is also disrupting the hormones causing this rise in estrogen. It's everywhere, it's everywhere. One lady said to me, Barbara, I've just looked at all my clothes, I'm going to have to throw them all out. Well, the good news is, there are some fabrics that we know natural fabrics are linen and cotton and wool, and I'm sure in Idaho you wear a lot of wool, am I right? You should. I've got woolen leggings on, I've got woolen skirt, I've got a woolen top, and you can get beautiful, soft, thin wools. You've got Smart Wool. That's an American brand. I think this is a Smart Wool. And it's so soft I can wear it next to my skin, and then that's a bit prickly, but I don't mind because it's not touching my skin. So on the neck of the sheep is the soft wool that they make the inner garments with, and then that back of the sheep wool, you can make the coats out of that. And the beauty of wool, we were on our morning walk this morning, and I had an alpaca top on, and then I had a wool under that, and wool under that, and wool under that. And it was lightly raining, and my woolen hat. And you know, when I woke up back inside, all the light rain does is sit on the outside, but I was warm inside and breathing. Someone has made a fortune out of polyester. And Jacqueline and I, we were in Airbnbs and different places. There's not a place we have stayed in that hasn't got polyester blankets. So you just touch them, it's If you want to feel something nice, you come up and touch me. Not all at once. And when I was in Ireland, the only place you can buy wool is the tourist shops. I said, Irish, start supporting your local industry. And when I was in Scotland, I was signing a book, and a lady came up to me and she said, I'm a shepherdess. She said, we're burning our wool. She said, we're using wool for compost on our trees. Yeah. This has crept up on us without even realising. We've got to go back to supporting our local industry. Be careful where your dollar goes. I'm very careful where my dollar goes. So starting to be aware of our exposure to chemicals, because you will notice that after the Industrial Revolution and humanity was exposed now to so many more chemicals, you look at that, that's when the rise in cancers. So it's not just hormones, yes, it's the synthetic hormones, and I'm pretty sure it's Thursday night, am I right, Jack? Where's Jack? Where's my right hand lady? Thursday we look at hormones, where I'll look in detail about how this disruption takes place and how to restore it. But that wild yam cream with diosgenin, you can buy a wild yam cream that just has the diosgenin in it. And that when that's applied to the skin, the fat cells take it up, and what it does little by little by little, it boosts progesterone. When you boost that mother hormone, whether it be male with prostate, whether it be female with breast cancer, or any type of endocrine cancer, it causes it restores the balance, which is actually what we want. So they're important parts of cancers like the breast cancer, but also what you've got is poultices. And so I had a lady attend our program, and she said to me, 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. She said, I'm lying in the hospital, and they were offering me to be poisoned, burnt, and cut. I mean, chemo, radio, and operation. Do you know what? He suggests that in 20 years we're going to look back and say we're in the dark ages with cancer treatments. So she was lying in hospital, she didn't like the sound of what they wanted to do to her, and a delivery boy came in and she said, can I get a lift out with you? She rang a friend who had a beach house. It was winter, so no one was really staying in the beach house. She said she walked up and down the beach every day. She dived in the beach quickly. And she'd heard about castor oil. Castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And she said, I wore the pastoral compress on my breast 24/7. I've had some people say, is that safe? Or does anyone say that about the chemicals that they put in? So what she did was she made that's a little bit small, we'll do it more to size. So it's a very simple way to make the compress, and depending on the size, and you put that much castor oil on, like a big bubble, because it is so thick. One lady said, I think I bought the wrong castor oil, it's so sticky. I said, yeah, that's what it is. It's just very, very sticky. And if you overdo it, it'll drip everywhere, and you don't want that. It's horrible stuff in that respect. And then as it soaks through, it'll take about 15 minutes, it now takes up that much of the compress. And then when it goes on your hot body, which warms the oil, it takes up more. And that's the best way to make it. And what you also need is several layers, because the thicker your compress, the more castor oil it can hold, and then more castor oil going into you. And then it's just covered by a little plastic strip. So the little plastic strip might be on the back like that. And what the plastic does is it insulates it and it stops it soiling the clothes. And she just bought a sports bra, and she just devoted it to that. And she said if she was careful with it, she really didn't get it dripping everywhere. But castor oil penetrates deeper than any other oil. And it will penetrate through and break up unnatural formations. It'll even break up a bone spur. Not overnight, of course. The bone spur's been there 3 years, it might take 3 months. If it's been there 3 months, it might take 3 weeks. So much depends on how long it has been there. So if it'll break up a bone spur, it'll certainly break up any unnatural formations. So if there's growths on the breast, put it on the breast. If it grows anywhere in the body, apply that castor oil compress. So if it's cancer is in the colon, then apply it to the abdominal area. If it's in the kidneys, apply it there. So wherever it is. What about the head? Well, you can certainly apply it there. It won't be hard to, usually a scale will show you exactly where it is. Yes, the castor oil will even penetrate through bone. There are specifics for different types of cancers. I have many books at home that were written by professors, scientists, doctors, specialists, GPs, nutritionists, naturopaths that have conquered cancer. And you will find that there are many different things that people say, and it can be very confusing. So as I read all of these accounts, I came to 3 common denominators. And that's what I want to share with you now, those 3 common denominators. But before I do, I just want to finish the story of the lady who said she had breast cancer 20 years ago, remember? Got out with the delivery boy, went to the friend's house that had the beach house. She walked up and down the beach every day. She went to organic food. She started on a plant-based, very simple diet, applied the castor oil every day. And she said as she walked every day, she'd ask God to bring to her mind anybody that she needed to forgive. If she had any area in her life, and that is an important part of healing, is the emotional part. Anyway, she said that lump started to go down little by little. She said within 6 months there was no trace of the lump. So remember, she came to us 20 years later. She said, I had breast cancer 20 years ago. Now I want to tell you one other story before I go into defining these things. And when I was in Los Angeles last November, I was speaking at a conference, and there was a lady there who was also speaking, and she had her book. She gave me her book. She'd conquered breast cancer. She was about 48, and I think she had the breast cancer when she was about 43. And she did just what the only thing she knew and didn't even question they said, quickly, we can start chemotherapy immediately. And they said, with chemotherapy, it'll shrink the cancer, then we can maybe do a mastectomy. So she started the chemotherapy tablet by mouth. And she said that she started to get diarrhea quite badly. And she was constantly nauseous. And she was a dark-skinned lady. She had dreadlocks, and she said after 2 months she cried because her dreadlocks were just falling out. And she said after 2 months she got to the point where she was having diarrhea and vomiting 37 times a day. And she got so thin, she was just constantly nauseous, that they had to put a drip in to give her some nourishment, but they couldn't find a vein. Her arms just got so totally bruised. And then she found she couldn't walk because she had peripheral neuropathy, another side effect of the chemotherapy. She said it felt like she was walking on razor blades. And every day the tablet would come and she would take it. After 3 months of this, she had a scan and the cancer had not shrunk at all. And she kept taking the tablet. That's why I love that verse in Psalm 146, verse 3. It says, "Put not your trust in princes, neither in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath goes forth, he returns unto his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish." In other words, he's just a man. And it's just an opinion, and sometimes they get it wrong. That's why the Bible says, put not your trust there. So what do? Well, verse 5 tells you, it says, "Happy is he that has the God of Jacob as his help, whose hope is in the Lord his God, that made heaven, earth, sea, and all that in them is, that keeps truth forever."
Amen.
This lady kept taking the tablet, being crushed. She got to the point where she couldn't walk. She had to be in a wheelchair. And then a friend visited. And the friend said, I chose not to do this. And she said, "I've conquered my cancer. I use natural remedies." And she left. And this lady started to think, so she started to Google. And she found people that had conquered their cancer. And she didn't want to go up on mad tangents. And so she found organic food was a common denominator. She found that juicing was another common denominator. Black seed oil, so a few people mentioned that. So she asked her husband to take her to the health food shop because she was in a wheelchair, and she started to get organic food. She started to do this, and then she made a very difficult decision. She stopped the tablet, but she didn't tell anyone because she said she knew they'd get angry with her. You know, it's your God-given right to do what you do to your body.
Amen.
But when you're in such a weakened state, you need the support of the ones you love. And she didn't even tell her husband because she knew he'd get angry, because he had total trust in the system. She'd hide the tablet. And she took the organic food. She started juicing. And she knew she had to start walking. So she got a physiotherapist. First day she could only walk one step, and it just was too painful. She said after a couple of weeks, her hair stopped falling out. It started to grow. The nausea stopped. She was able to start eating. The diarrhea stopped. The vomiting stopped. And after 3 months, slowly she's getting better. She could walk 4 steps, and then a few days later 6 steps, even though it was excruciatingly painful. After 3 months she had a scan and the cancer was shrinking. And everyone was very happy. They said the treatment's working. But she still didn't tell anyone. She just wanted to be sure. After 6 months, the cancers had shrunk right down. She was starting to walk, for a few minutes at a time. And she asked her husband if they could go out. And she told him. She said, "I haven't taken the chemotherapy for 6 months." She said, "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you, but I knew you loved me so much. You wanted to go with the only treatment that you knew." And when I'm reading this book, I have to tell you, I felt anger. And I thought, I'm not reading of a concentration camp here. I'm reading about people in chemotherapy clinics. I do acknowledge, and I had a guest that had a tumour so big it had blocked her colon. She had the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, which shrunk it, so her colon could move again. Then she came to Misty Mountain, and she went through what I'm going to show you here. I certainly do acknowledge that. And that's why I think we have to continually listen to our bodies and know our bodies, because our bodies will tell us if things aren't working well. Simple as the colon. If we eat 3 meals a day, guess how many times we should be evacuating? 3. And if we're not, that, something can be happening in there, not immediately. The body is incredible how it doesn't strike us down straight away. So what are these 3 common denominators? I'm going to define them by listing what cancer hates. Now, if you know what cancer hates, that's exactly what we want to do to the body. We want to create in the body an environment where it's impossible for cancer to survive. Cancer hates low glucose. Why is that? Because cancer cells consume 15 times the glucose of any other cell. We're going to go to the cell, and I'm going to show you what happens in the cell. The glucose goes in. Now this week we're going to go inside the cell quite a bit, because that's what we are. We're just a bunch of cells. And 100 trillion cells in the body, and 75 trillion are, as I'm drawing here, 25 trillion are the red blood cells. And the red blood cells are the carriers to what I call the CBD, the inside, the central business district of the human body, the inside workings of the cell. It's fascinating what's going inside that cell. When you understand what's going on inside the cell, when you understand how the cell works, then you understand the conditions to give the cell for healing. So the glucose goes in, and it goes through a 20-step pathway. And this 20-step pathway gives us 2 units of energy. Isn't that why we eat? To give us energy. Now, the end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate, as the chemical form of glucose, gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse of the cell, because this 8-step pathway delivers to us 36 units of energy. Wow. How come a 20-step pathway only gives us 2 units of energy, and how come an 8-step pathway gives us 36? It's oxygen. This pathway here, no oxygen. And this pathway here is a very fast pathway. It consumes huge amounts of glucose and doesn't use oxygen. Cancer hates oxygen. The fact is, cancer cannot live in the present. A cancer cell runs up here. No oxygen, huge amounts of glucose. Doesn't every cell in the body use glucose? Yes, it does. But this pathway, it can wait from the glucose from the carrot and the lentil and the almond. But this pathway here, it loves and is sustained by a high glucose diet. It's like a lady, she's happy for me to share her story. Her name's Elizabeth Cott. And she came to us, I think she was late 60s when she came to us, and she had 3 big tumours in her abdomen, and the doctor said, you've got to do chemo immediately. She didn't like the look of chemo, she didn't like the look of the side effects. Do you know what chemotherapy is? Cytotoxic. Do you know what that means? Poison to the cell. And the reason why chemotherapy works, and there are some people that certainly have recovered, there are some people that have had chemo and they've recovered, there's no doubt about that. Because this glycolytic pathway is consuming 15 times the glucose of any other cell, when chemo goes in, it consumes 15 times the chemo. That's how it works. But I was reading the confessions of a chemotherapy sales rep, and he said he was at a conference, they were explaining the chemo, and the speaker said, it's a gamble. We're just hoping more cancer cells die than good cells. He was shocked. But what shocked him more was that no one else in the room was shocked. So it's like playing Russian roulette. And the story I'm about to tell you has been told to me many, many times. Lady comes. She's got brain cancer and liver cancer. She said 2 years ago, I had a blood cancer, and I took chemo and radiotherapy, and after 3 months they said, you're totally cured. But she said, 4 years ago I had breast cancer. I did chemo, they did radiotherapy, I had a double mastectomy, and after 4 months they said, you're totally cured. And then 2 years later, she had blood cancer. Chemo, radiotherapy, 3 months, you're cured. And now she's got liver cancer and brain cancer. What, was she cured? And one lady who came to our retreat was when I was home in January, she said at 26 I had breast cancer. She said I had chemotherapy and radiotherapy and mastectomy. She said 5 years after that I had a party because, they said she'd been cancer-free for 5 years. She said 2 weeks later she had pain in her hips. She's got cancer in her hips now. Was she cured? And I have heard that so many times. It appears like it has done it, but comes back. Because if you don't turn the tap off, if you don't find the cause, you will never have a cure. A lady said to me, Barbara, have you heard the latest research in America? These doctors are discovering that cancer thrives with high sugar and no oxygen. I said, well, I'm so glad that they're studying that, but did you know that in 1946, Professor Otto Warburg got a Nobel Prize for that discovery? 1946. We're 2025. See, what happened? Well, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds came in. And they funded the research to go to chemoradiotherapy. Cancer hates. You see, cancer thrives in an acid environment. So let me go back to Elizabeth Cott. She didn't like the sound of chemo. She didn't like the sound of the side effects. And a friend gave her a DVD of mine, because this was probably 2 years ago now, on cancer. So she booked into Misty Mountain Health Retreat. And she went through the treatments that I'm going to show you that we did there. She went home and she was feeling great. And after 3 months, she went back to the doctor. And he said, keep doing what you're doing, and I'll see you in 6 months. Now, what did he say 3 months before? You're going to have chemo immediately. This is fast growing. You see, all her cancer markers had gone down. Her inflammatory markers had gone down. And so he did not pressure her to do anything at all, but to keep doing what she's doing. She ended up going back after 1 year after her initial diagnosis, and the doctor said, I'm a bit puzzled, but one of your tumours has disappeared. I think it was something like 8 months later, another tumour had disappeared. When she goes to see the doctor now, the specialist, the oncologist are there, they just look at her. They can't understand what is happening. She said, I'm in my late 70s now, and she said, I have never felt better. And when I was being attacked in Australia, they said Elizabeth Cotty's a fictitious woman. She said, give them my phone number. I said to her a few weeks later, have they rang you? She said, no. No, they haven't. Maybe they don't want the truth. I don't know. See, my husband has a political party in Australia. It's called HEART, Health, Environment, Accountability, Rights and Transparency, campaigning for free choice for Australians. And we actually think that's why they attacked me, to get at him. He said he wasn't, that came in from sideways there. But as I showed you in our last lecture, our microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust. And that is why just coming in and blasting bacteria with antibiotics really isn't the answer. You have to find out why they're there in the first place and create an environment in the body where it can't survive, and at the same time taking the herbs to knock it back. But you'll notice how I showed you that our microorganisms have the ability to adapt and adjust. So if you keep throwing garlic at it, it'll eventually adapt and adjust to it. So what you do is you do a different one every week or every 2 weeks. So it might be garlic 3 times a day for a week or 2 weeks. And then just as the microorganisms are starting to get used to that, you do something else. You might do olive leaf extract 3 times a day for 2 weeks. And then grapefruit seed extract. Grapefruit seed extract's very strong. It's about 5 drops in a little bit of water, 3 times a day. And then another one is portiaco. And portiaco is a South American herb that has strong antifungal properties. And another one is oregano, or you call it oregano. Is that right? Now, I had a sore throat about 3 weeks ago, so I put oregano oil on it. Real bad. And I said, as part of your program, you start with 1 drop in just a little bit of water. And then you might have a nice carrot, celery, and apple juice to follow that. And that is a juice that is highly alkalizing too, is the carrot, celery, and apple juice. But back with the oregano oil, some people have found they can build up to even 3 drops 3 times a day. You just do what you can handle. So I'll go back to that now. I'll go back to the juice and show you the juice. So we're going to look at a whole lot of ways you can alkalize, and juices have been used very successfully in the treatment of cancer because the juices are nutrient-packed and the body needs nutrients to heal. And the one that we use is 80% carrot. This is called the vegetarian's milk, because you could just about subsist on this juice. In fact, I've met 2 women who gave it to their babies instead of milk. Their babies had major allergies. juice. 10% apple and 10% celery. Now, some people have commented to me that isn't that a lot of sugar when you realise that you're trying to get the sugars down? Because they're so high in minerals that it doesn't get the sugar levels up. I don't suggest that you have 10 of those a day, but 3 a day. What we usually do at our retreat, when people come to Misty Mountain, they usually come in on Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday are juicing days. And we serve a juice every 2 hours, and it's mostly carrot and apple. Sometimes we'll vary it a bit and put some cucumber in, sometimes we'll put a bit of beet in, sometimes we'll put some greens in, but that's the main one. But that is a very alkalizing juice. And on Friday we're going to be looking at inflammation and that certainly is a great antidote to conquer inflammation. Green drinks is another big alkalizer. So with green drinks, what we do at Misty Mountain, because we've got a big garden and we've got a lot of land, is we'll gather wild greens, say 4 cups of wild greens, 4 cups of water, blend them together. We always make 1 of the cups of greens mint, so it tastes a bit better. And we blend it and strain it and pour it into bottles. So it's like drinking grass. Green. So here is the molecular structure of plant blood, which basically is chlorophyll. And here is the molecular structure of human blood. Looks almost identical. Don't know why the team decided to do that, but it did. So there's plant and there's human. There is one difference, and the middle molecule is iron, and with the plant blood, the middle molecule is magnesium. And so these green drinks have a cleansing effect in the tissues and also in the blood and the blood boosters, and they're highly alkalizing because the green vegetables are high in the alkaline minerals, which are magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium and iron. They're the alkaline minerals. Now, if you don't have greens like we have, the person can buy barley green or green barley, or you can buy chlorophyll, and maybe have that 3 times a day. So what you're aiming to do is alkalize from the inside. There's more ways you can alkalize. Dr. Tullio Simongini was injecting sodium bicarbonate into the cancer of his patients. I'm not a doctor, I don't put water counts in, but we discovered a treatment that was very effective. And this is not a cancer cure because the body and the body only is the one that can cure cancer. But what it is, it's part of a regime of giving the body so it's impossible for cancer to survive, and there's sodium bicarbonate wraps. Can you drink sodium bicarbonate? The only time that I would advise that would be to gargle it if you had cancer in the throat, because sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches. And if someone had stomach cancer, they could drink it first thing in the morning and maybe last thing at night, because the only part of the stomach that is acid, the only part of the body that's acid is the stomach. The stomach should be acid because it's acid that breaks the food down. But the acid's only released when you see, smell, think, look food. So when you wake up in the morning, it's not acid. The acid's just released when the food comes. And so if there is stomach cancer, then the sodium bicarbonate can be drunk first thing in the morning or maybe last thing at night. Remember, sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches. How would you make it up? Usually a teaspoon to a cup of water. But also, if someone has colon cancer, they could put the sodium bicarbonate mix into an enema, and they could have an enema with it. But what we were doing, and a Canadian doctor gave me this recipe, was sodium bicarbonate wraps, where we get 2 kilos of sodium bicarbonate, 5 litres of hot water and lemon, juice of the lemon, and we dip towels in out of one part of the body, then cover it with wool, and then another towel on the leg, and then another one on the arm. It's quite an involved treatment, and then wrap the whole body in a blanket. So all sweat out, which of course opens the pores of the skin and it comes into the tissues. Green drinks and this carrot soda and apple juice, they alkalize the tissues internally. Sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches, but the beauty of the wraps is that it's been taken through the pores. Also, another treatment that alkalizes is hyperbaric chambers. Now, the hyperbaric chambers were developed for divers with bends. You see, the air we're breathing in is 79% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. So the divers come up so quick from the depths that they can't breathe out all the nitrogen, so it comes into place in their tissues, their muscles, joints. And what they found was when they put them in the hyperbaric chamber, the hyperbaric chamber works on Henry's law, and Henry's law states that more gas goes into a liquid under pressure. And the gas, of course, is oxygen, pure oxygen being pumped in, and the liquid is the blood, because the blood is the carrier of oxygen. And so the hyperbaric chamber just ups the oxygen content in the body, and so in the cell. And cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. There is a retreat it's called Eden Valley in Colorado, and they have several hyperbaric chambers and treatment that which has been used for many years. That's another one of upping the temperature of the body to literally burn out harmful pathogens. So when someone comes to our retreat in Australia, this basically is what we do. We give them a diet that's no fruit for 6 weeks, lots of vegetables, legumes, because legumes are medium to low in carbohydrates, a little grain, not a lot, and the herbs, alternate them every couple of weeks, and the juices and green drinks, and when they're misty, the hyperbaric and sodium hypochlorite. And this basically is what Elizabeth Cobb did, and she found that little by little her cancers went. And we had another man attend our program with prostate cancer. He didn't really want to be at our retreat, but his wife and his daughter were really keen, but he did not like what medicine was offering to him. So he went along with it, and when he came, it was very interesting because he was mid-50s, his wife was early 50s, his daughter was 30. And everything I was talking about is about 5 years ago. His daughter and his wife were, yes, he'll do it, yes. And he was surprised. But he was sort of there a bit reluctantly, but he knew he had to do something and didn't want to do what medicine offered. And it was funny, we'd offer him the green drinks, and he'd look at it, his daughter and his wife were just about pouring it down, and it was in my book, Self-Heal by Design. It's called the Cancer Conquering Diet. So I give illustrations of what to eat. And then after 6 weeks on that, there's the antifungal diet, stage 1. So that's usually 2 months on that. You can start having some grapefruit, granny-smith apples, and maybe a little bit more carbohydrates. And then after 2 months of that, they go to the antifungal stage 2 diet. And that's the maintenance diet. That's the diet the person stays on until they get the all clear. And that's a little bit more fruit, maybe some berries now, which aren't really high sweet. And you have a wonderful bread in America. It's called Simple Needs. And that Simple Needs is a gluten-free, and it has low carbohydrate, great protein bread. You can they'll even ship to your house, the Simple Needs bread. It's all organic, it's great. And so this guy with prostate cancer, what we also did was put him on the wild yam cream to balance it out. He also took some herbs for the prostate, salt, palmetto. In my book, Sustain Me, I have a chapter called Male Genetics. So episodes about male matters where I talk about the prostate and list the herbs in there. So we heard from him 3 months later. He said, I've just had a test and I have no cancer. Now he's in